The debate over health care reform has turned from contentious to potentially dangerous. At least 10 Democratic members of Congress have said they have received threats after voting in favor of the bill. The FBI is investigating the threats as well as acts of vandalism at 4 Democratic offices around the country. Leading Democrats are calling on Republicans to denounce those threats.
I would hope that we would join together jointly and make it very clear that none of us condone this kind of activity, and when we see it, that we speak out strongly in opposition to it.
In Virginia, someone cut a gas line at the home of a congressman's brother after his address was posted online by Tea Party activists. A threatening letter was also sent to the home. For more now, we're joined by Jonathan Allen, congressional reporter for Politico. Good morning, Jonathan.
Good morning.
Death threats, threats in general, and vandalism. What is going on here?
Well, I think you've got a lot of very angry and misguided people who are taking out their anger through threats and actually acts of violence, at least with the vandalism. I spoke to a Democratic congressman from Michigan, Bart Stupak. Many people remember he was in the middle of the abortion debate on this bill. He said he was getting death threats, that his wife really couldn't even answer the phone anymore at his home. It's really gotten very, very ugly out there. As you mentioned before, there was a gas line that was cut at the home of a congressman's brother. I mean, these are very, very strong and disturbing acts, and obviously don't really fit into the sort of American democratic construct where when you're angry with the person you elected, you vote them out of office.
Absolutely. And the congressmen right now, I'm sure some of them must be scared. It's a very scary situation. How are they dealing with it on a personal level and then also in connection with authorities?
Well, you know, I think a lot of members of Congress are used to a very low level of intimidation, sometimes occasionally from a few crazies in their district now and again, and they report that to authorities. But I think the intensity and the volume of these things is really unusual. They are reporting these things. I know that Democratic members of Congress were briefed by law enforcement officers today in a private session in which some of them shared their experiences with each other. And of course, in sharing those experiences with each other, I think they're noting to their colleagues a little bit that they are taking some of this to heart and how difficult it is personally.
You mentioned that a way that dissatisfied people can speak out is with their vote. The midterm elections are coming up in November. We saw some protesters outside the White House, outside of Capitol Hill, some with signs that said the slaughterhouse will be in November. How serious is this for some of the Democrats that voted in favor of the health care reform bill?
I certainly think there are Democrats who are likely to hear about this heading up to Election Day. Of course, elections are usually about more than just one issue, not always. So there are definitely Democrats, certainly moderate Democratic candidates in swing districts who voted for this who could have some problems, and even some of those who voted against it where their constituents are really unhappy with the Democratic leadership. But we'll just have to see over the next 7 or so months until the election.
As the senators are working on a list of amendments, possible amendments, some of the Democrats are being backed into a corner. Republicans have said, you know, we want to change this, but if they vote for it, that's a problem. If they vote against these amendments, that's another problem. How are they handling all this?
Well, the bill that now the law that the House passed over the weekend is in effect, and there are some changes the House wanted to make. They've sent it over to the Senate. It was part of the deal they struck with the Senate. If any of these amendments, and right now they've been in a vote-a-rama for hours where they're voting on amendment after amendment after amendment. If any of them are successful, that means that the bill has to be sent back to the House. It means it goes further in the legislative process. And the conundrum that you have if you're a member of Congress is some of these are very politically appealing amendments. Senator Tom Coburn, for instance, offered one earlier that would have banned child molesters and rapists from having access to erectile dysfunction drugs through the new health care exchanges. That's something that's very difficult to vote against, but Democrats did in fact sink that. One of the ways they're trying to address those votes is introducing standalone legislation so they have something to point to and say, I'm actually for banning this thing. I've introduced a bill to do it, but it wasn't appropriate to add an amendment that would have sidelined the health care bill.
What's the progress on the lawsuits from the states in relation to this?
Well, you're seeing lawsuits crop up all over the states. I think there are attorneys general and certainly some legislatures that believe that this new health care law infringes on the rights of the states, and I think that you're going to see some of those progress forward a little bit, but we should always remember the federal government does have broad powers, and that the courts often recognize the federal government's power to legislate for the country. You know, in some of these cases, it almost sounds like going back to Civil War times or pre-Civil War times, where you've got states attempting to nullify federal laws.
All right, Jonathan Allen from Politico. Jonathan, thanks so much.
Always my pleasure.